It's a Marty party.
I want to talk about a new documentary that came out recently. It's called The Age of Disclosure. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. It's a feature-length documentary directed by Dan Farah, and it's featuring 34 U.S. government officials. It claims there has been an 80-year global cover-up of non-human intelligent life and a secret war among major nations to reverse engineer advanced technology of non-human origin. Okay? So we're talking UAPs, we're talking, formerly unknown aerial phenomena. It's kind of the new term for UFO, unknown flying object. And this is interesting stuff, right? And in this documentary, it's, it has multiple interview subjects. It's got 34 of them. And initially, when I first started watching this, some of them, one guy in particular, seemed like he was reading off of a teleprompter or a script or something like that. So I was initially a little bit skeptical about the veracity of this documentary. If you've got people like reading a script, I firmly believe documentaries, the only people that should be reading off of a script is the narrator, right, or the director. The people being interviewed, though, should be just sort of talking off the cuff, unedited. And it seemed like that was going on in the beginning, but then things really started to get interesting. And I will say that feeling of people talking off a teleprompter kind of went away. That was just, kind of in the beginning there. And I think it was the way they just organized the initial hook of the documentary. But, all of these people that they had on there, they had the credentials to back up their claims. There were politicians and bureaucrats from both sides of the aisle in this documentary, and everyone from the sort of the tactical level Air Force security forces guys that have been involved in some of these, for lack of a better term, incidences, all the way up to policy level decision makers, involved in some of this stuff. So this was not just like some wacko that says that he was abducted by aliens that they pulled into a documentary. These are serious people, fighter pilots, security personnel, government officials that have a lot to use, a lot of reputational risk by coming out and being a part of this. And they all did it because they are concerned about national security. And sort of, one thing that really caught my attention right off the bat was the fact that there's this thing called the Legacy Program. Okay. And this is the thing that goes all the way back to what they reference as going all the way back to the 1940s, when there were these initial discoveries of crashed craft of unknown origin, that sort of stuff. So they've had 80 years of sort of being the go-to people, but they're not like, it's kind of a black program, right? Like it's not officially acknowledged, and allegedly they're funded by misappropriated funds that are appropriated by Congress for other reasons, but they're misappropriated to fund this program, and it's been going on for a long time. According to the documentary, the Legacy Program consists of representatives from the CIA, U.S. Air Force, Department of Energy, and major U.S. defense contractors. Now, that doesn't mean that the director of the CIA knows everything about this, or that the Secretary of the Air Force or whatever. No, these are, from what it sounds like, these are very compartmentalized programs within each of those entities that come together as a part of this general affiliation that is referred to as the Legacy Program. What I thought was interesting is you would think a documentary about aerial phenomena that we don't know what they are, and basically aliens, right, and talking about the existing aliens, you'd think that the antagonist of this documentary would be the UAPs, the aliens. It's really not. It's actually the way this documentary is designed is that the Legacy Program is framed as the antagonist, because these are the people that are allegedly keeping all these other people that want to be whistleblowers on this and think that the truth should be out there and are concerned about national security and all these other things, keeping them hushed up, and allegedly going so far as to threaten to or actually kill people over it to keep the secret. That's all really interesting. And I think that the mere existence of this program kind of confirms, or at least lends credence to, the idea that there is a deep state. Like, this seems like the definition of a deep state that is a part of the government, but not accountable to taxpayers, not accountable to legislators, not accountable to any of these people. And that is a problem. put it bluntly. Some other interesting things that were talked about though is these folks that are on like the UAP task force, and this is a different entity that was started in recent years as basically a response to the legacy program to on behalf of legislators to go say like, hey, go figure out what we know about this and what we don't know, and basically go start snooping around. They came up with 6 characteristics that define UAP. They call them the observables, right? These are the observables that are help us identify, okay, what we're looking at is a UAP. Now the documentary, one of the guys in the documentary cites these 6 observables as one of them being speed. He notes that we don't have anything faster than about 4,000 that goes faster than 4,600 miles per hour outside of things like missiles or spacecraft that are re-entering the atmosphere. I mentioned earlier Artemis 2 will re-enter the atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour. These are things that are crashing to the Earth. They're not maneuvering through the skies, right? As far as things that we can maneuver through the skies with, piloted and all, and it's in the atmosphere, all of that. We top out at about 4,600 miles per hour. They've observed UAPs going over 40,000 miles per hour in, again, normal atmospheric conditions. So incredible speed is one of the observables. Then we've got instant acceleration. Multiple people described these things as going from complete standstill to incredible speeds that are barely fathomable, from just a cold start. They also, the third observable is low observability. The documentary notes that the FFA, the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, has significant gaps in its ability to detect UAPs. And they kind of note that, hey, if we are taking this seriously, the FAA should be tracking everything in the sky, not just some of the stuff, not just the things that have their transponders turned on or things like that. And I think that's a legitimate critique, right? And then they also UAPs. The fourth observable is they are capable of transmedium travel. That means they can basically effortlessly go from flying through the air, through space, up into space, and then back down and through water without ever losing speed or having any noticeable effects of resistance or gravity on it. So the UAPs are capable, by definition, of transmedium travel. I think it's also interesting to note just talking about they can go through air, space, and water like it's nothing. I think it's interesting to note that when we think about UAPs and who might be in them and where they come from and all of that, we tend to think of them as just strictly extraterrestrial, right? Like they are from a different planet. They are not from Earth. They are from somewhere else in the solar system or the galaxy or the universe, right? Like they are somewhere else. I think there's 2 other possibilities though, and I'm not the first person to say this, but maybe they're extraterrestrial, but maybe they're interdimensional. Maybe they're from Earth, but from a different dimension, right? And if you say, Marty, that sounds like a bunch of hogwash. Well, I mean, as a Christian, I already acknowledge 2 different dimensions, hell and heaven. They're talked about in the Bible, right? Like, so, and most people on earth acknowledge the existence of other dimensions, but they're usually talking about it in a religious context, right? And so we already kind of acknowledge that. So, maybe these things are from Earth or from, around Earth, but from a different dimension, and they are capable of interdimensional travel, but not great distances across time and space. And then there's also the possibility that they are not extraterrestrial, they are not interdimensional, but they are capable of traveling outside time. Said another way, capable of time travel. Are these future humans coming back to this time that we're seeing? Are these past humans coming forward? Are these beings that existed on Earth in a different time, but went as far as we can observe them extinct, and they now travel throughout time and they're observed? That's possible too. So it's these things, they're capable of going through airspace and water, that transmedium travel. I think that they could come from a variety of different sources of origin: extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or outside of time. All right, back to the observables. The 5th observable is they don't observe gravity. They are anti-gravity. They are not beholden to the laws of gravity or physics, apparently. And then, and you can observe so much in some of these, like fighter pilot camera footage that has been released. It's pretty wild. And then there's also biological effects for humans that come into contact with UAPs. The documentary cites people who have been in contact with these UAPs as having horrific burns on the exterior of their body, having internal scarring not observable from the exterior, as well as developing autoimmune diseases. They said, one guy in the documentary said that there's a 25% mortality rate for people that work on UAPs or within these programs within 7 years of contact with a UAP. You know, that, I mean, that makes sense, right? These are probably high radiation, exotic materials, that sort of stuff, things that just humans haven't been exposed to before. So I'm not shocked that humans that are going near these things are having some pretty serious adverse effects. So those are the 6 observables that characterize a UAP: speed, instant acceleration, low observability, transmedium travel, anti-gravity, and biological effects. Now, going next, a big part of the documentary talked about basically there's a secret war going on and the impacts that all UAPs have on national security. And I think these are very valid concerns. By the way, this is the reason most of these like politicians and bureaucrats cite as saying, hey, this is why I'm coming forward, because we need to take this seriously. I think even Marco Rubio, who's in the documentary, said like, hey, we didn't think it was possible for terrorists to come over here, train on commercial aircraft, and then ram planes into buildings and knock down some of our most prominent skyscrapers until they did it. We didn't think that the Japanese were capable of attacking Pearl Harbor and using advanced torpedoes and all these other things until they did. And so the point a lot of these guys are trying to make is like, hey, these are serious threats. They are displaying capabilities that are not anywhere in the realm of what we are currently capable of doing. So we need to figure out what's going on, acknowledge out in the open that this is a thing, and kind of put everybody's brain power on top of this. Specifically, when we look at the effects on national security, the Soviets allegedly recovered a tic-tac shaped UAP, which is interesting because we spotted a tic-tac shaped UAP via fighter pilots that got footage of it recently in the past few years. But they allegedly recovered one. And this was in 1989, so right around the fall of the Soviet Union, along with 4, here's where it gets wild, hold on to your butts, along with 4 humanoid beings inside this tic-tac shaped UAP. And they also captured an advanced directed energy weapon. And that's where we get into, okay, well, are they capable of reverse engineering that stuff? China, we know, has recovered UAPs, so the documentary claims. Are they trying to reverse engineer alien tech? Now, we've been recovering UAPs for about 80 years now, according to the documentary. And the documentary features a source who said that in 1964, there were 3 UAPs that landed at Holloman Air Force Base, and a non-human being came out of one of them and made contact with uniformed service members at the base, as well as a few CIA personnel. That's wild. That's a wild accusation to make, to say that there's been actual contact made between these things that are possibly out there and us as humans. I have to believe that there's pictures out there of that. You can't tell me nobody out on the airfield that day, if that actually happened, there's not pictures somewhere of that meeting. Now, we have to think about this from a couple of different angles, right? UAPs have already been allegedly, again, according to the documentary, responsible for turning on Russian nuclear weapons, kind of just showing off the fact that, like, hey, we can turn this shit on and there's not a thing that you can do about it. And if we want to, we can make you guys start a nuclear war with each other. It was kind of a flex is what it seems. And regardless of origin, any UAP that's violating our sovereign airspace, that's concerning. We should have complete dominance of our own sovereign airspace in the United States, right? So if we've got these things that are running around unchecked and we don't know what they are and they're more capable than us, that's a problem. All right. And then we have to think about the fact that this isn't an exclusively American problem. UAPs aren't just showing up in American territory. They're showing up around the world, and other countries are potentially crashing or having interactions around the world. So are our adversaries getting access to this advanced alien tech, right? Will that potentially give them a leg up on us? do our adversaries think that we have access to alien tech? And so now they're thinking about, like, this is basically an arms race that's starting because everybody thinks that the other is developing advanced alien technology that will put them not just generations but potentially centuries ahead of everybody else in capability. So this is a serious thing. We need to, I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we need to be talking about this out loud of, hey, if we've got actual evidence of this and every sign points to we do, then we need to be talking about this out loud. All right? Like, serious thing. Now, basically everyone with knowledge of these programs claims they cannot reveal classified information because there is fear and threat of either assassination or imprisonment. And these guys don't seem like they are bluffing on that front. There's been testimony in Congress, hand on the Bible, like testimony saying as such. One quote in the documentary stood out to me. They said, you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. And they use that to explain what kind of like why the legacy program exists and why there are some people that want to keep all this stuff secret, is because if we do have this advanced tech, if we tell our own people, then obviously all of our enemies will know that too. And again, will that start an arms race? How will that change the dynamics, the political landscape, all of that, right? So that's an interesting point. But, classified information is revealed all the time. There's constantly leaks. It's actually pretty impressive that there have been no serious leaks out of this. Obviously, there's these whistleblowers that have come forward, and that's something. But there's still things that they aren't telling us, So the threat must be very real for these people not to say everything that they know. What I'm wondering is, who's the original classification authority for this stuff? And is all of this under government classification authorities? Is some of it outside the purview of the government because we're working with these defense contractors? Remember, large contractors, military contractors, are part of the legacy program. That's interesting. Now, basically the way this classification would work under the legacy program is, because the Department of Energy is involved, the Department of Energy has their own classification system that's outside of the Department of Defense's, the CIA, the intel communities, all that stuff. They have their own classification system because of powers granted to them by the Atomic Energy Act that was passed way back when. And that's what they've been used to be able to say, to deny high-level politicians, in some cases, even sitting presidents, access to some of this information. Now, contractors that they're working with, they're outside of a classification system. They're outside of the ability for Freedom of Information Act requests to hold them account. And they're also outside of, government turnover, political cycles, things like that, the hems and haws of budgets and different things like that. By keeping it in the hands of defense contractors, well, you're removing some of those obstacles, but you're also taking it outside the cycle of accountability to our legislators, to the taxpayers that are funding it, and all of that different stuff. So, and at the end of the day, it puts enormous power in the hands of unelected businessmen, right? Like that's a problem, especially if these businesses possess technology greater than the United States government. That's a problem, if that's the case. Now, part of why there's such a stigma around this is because this legacy program has created that stigma, allegedly. They have ran influence operations inside the United States and around the world. They have made it so that public opinion equates anybody that talks about UAPs or aliens or any of that is like they're a crackpot. They're full of it. They are loony bin, right? Like, they've made the general society view via all these different levers that they can pull throughout the media and all that sort of stuff. They've made it so that anybody that does come forward is seen as just crazy, right? So it's an insurance policy against what they've already established as, hey, we're either going to kill you or imprison you if you speak about classified information, aka the information we don't want the public to know about, at least yet. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of legislators that are like, hold the fuck on. Who do you think you are? Like, we're here for oversight. We're elected. We have a problem with this. So there was something called the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, and that was sponsored by Senator Chuck Schumer, who's a Democrat from New York, along with Senators Mike Rounds, a Republican from South Dakota, Kristen Gillibrand, Democrat from New York, Marco Rubio, Republican from Florida, Todd Young, a Republican from Indiana, and Martin Heinrich, a Democrat from New Mexico. So this was a bipartisan bill, act that was put forward, and it had strong, very enforceable language. And there was things in there, the documentary talked about, there was things in that act that basically asserted eminent domain over anything to do with UAP materials, saying it doesn't matter if you're a government contractor, if you've got technology like this, that is property of the United States government because of national security reasons. And eminent domain is a very powerful tool. And so they put that in there. Well, it had pretty strong pushback from other politicians. And I kind of made me ask, like, okay, well, who's pushing back on this? This seems like something everybody should be in support of. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if these legacy program folks have certain politicians that are like basically bought and paid for, right? Or these defense contractors with their well-known lobbying apparatuses, right, are making sure that there's opposition to anything like this. And when I looked into it, basically the only thing I could see cited was that there are members of the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee that are opposing this act. And when you look at this, again, this is not just all Republicans or Democrats. The House Intelligence Committee has 13 Republicans and 12 Democrats on it. And the Senate Armed Services Committee has 14 Republicans and 13 Democrats. There's enough of them between those two places that are causing a stink and blocking this thing from actually getting through. And I got to ask, like, why? What's in it for you? Like, the only thing I can think of is they are being either bribed in some way or blackmailed in some way. That's the only thing that I can think of. Now, there's been more recent efforts since that 2023 UAP Disclosure Act. There's been the UAP Transparency Act, as well as the UAP Disclosure Act of 2025. That was a NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Amendment, and the UAP Whistleblower Protection Act. None of those have been passed yet, from what I can see, and are, again, they're being deliberated and receiving pushback. Now, I watched this documentary, right? And I'm not like your traditional conspiracy theorist or anything like that. But what I will say is I'll evaluate new information as it comes. And I understand that documentaries can be edited in a way to make things seem very dramatic and truthful and things like that. But there is such thing as creative editing and all of that. But between this documentary and everything else out there, and the types of people that were speaking on the record, again, people that have stuff to lose, that could suffer great reputational damage, right? Like, that makes me sort of believe at least some of this, that there's got to be some truth there. This feels like a where there's smoke, there's fire situation. There's a lot of smoke. Now, I'm still a Christian that's strong in his face, but I acknowledge at this point that God's creation might and probably does extend beyond Earth and even our solar system, right? And into the wider galaxy, the universe. The Bible talks about the universe, in fact. And that it is more likely than not that non-human intelligent life, not of this world, exists and is also a part of God's creation. I don't think that the existence of UAPs or non-human intelligent life that is not of this world, I don't think the mere existence of that is somehow at odds with my Christian faith, or that I believe in God, or that Jesus Christ died for my sins. Like, I don't think that those things are at odds. I think that maybe we just don't have the whole picture yet, right? So I don't know. I will end with the actual, I've said a few quotes throughout this podcast, but the actual quote of the week that I wanted to point out, because we've talked about, Artemis 2, as well as this Age of Disclosure documentary. I think that this quote from Arthur C. Clarke, he was a science fiction author, is very appropriate. He said, "Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying." Well said, Arthur. Well said.
It's a Marty party. It's a Marty party. Marty party.